Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Apologies for the delay on this episode. We've had a medical emergency in the family over the past couple of days. Took some surgery, but turned out all right. Darn body's got too many organs that don't need to be there and just like to cause trouble, I tell you. Anyway, we've got a lot of polls today on democracy, on UBI, on the CTC. Prepare for data. Quick shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Shay Meehan and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If any of you out there want to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/YangDaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. Now on to the news. Recent video of GOP legislators talking to an audience about the push to reform the filibuster contains a candor that we don't usually get from them. From former Republican U.S. Senator Rick Santorum, quote, "We don't want the people's will to be done," end quote. I mean, there it is. Now, in context, he says to be done immediately, but it would be actually more misleading to include immediately in the quote than to exclude it, because we know damn well that the filibuster does not just slow down legislation as it used to, it outright blocks it indefinitely. It shuts down democracy, and those in power and their corporate owners love that. It devolves politics into partisan tribalism, where any law that lobbyists want to kill has only to be called partisan, even if it is supported by a majority of Americans, even if it is supported by a majority of both parties. As Santorum said, the will of the people is not being done, and senators like it that way. In the video, Republican legislators go on to talk about how Sinema and Manchin are the best thing that ever happened to the GOP, and asks Republicans to call and thank them for shutting down the will of the people. I would strongly advise the opposite. Manchin and Sinema are squandering what may be our last chance at saving democracy in America. They need to believe that continuing their course of obstruction will be the end of their political career, because that seems to be all they care about. Reaffirming the importance of that is an online voter study group and YouGov poll from November of 2020 that I had not previously seen. They asked a range of questions to which the answers are alarming. From a sample of almost 6,000, 79% of Republicans surveyed did not trust the national vote count, 47% believed their vote might not have been counted, 72% believed there was a lot of mail voting fraud, 68% believed Trump won the election, 54% believed he should never concede, and 46% said states should override their popular vote counts. Take a second to absorb that. Not only was Trump successful in annihilating Republican trust in elections against all evidence, but he got the vast majority to believe he had won and got half to turn on democracy itself, because that is exactly what it means when you say that state legislatures should choose the winner instead of voters. It means you have rejected the very concept of democracy for authoritarian government, especially when you consider how many state legislatures have gerrymandered away the voters' ability to unseat them. That's not even representation anymore. That is where we are headed. That is where Sinema, Manchin, and the Republican Party are taking us. If you value your freedom, it's time to fight like hell, politically speaking. In happier news, Mountain View, California's Mayor Kamei has joined Mayors for AGI. The City Council has also thrown in and allocated $1 million toward an as-yet unspecified basic income pilot. They just keep coming. That's our work in action, gang. On the national scale, new Data for Progress polls confirm that a majority of Americans support both a $500 to $1,000 UBI and making the expanded child tax credit permanent. I imagine that will only increase as parents actually get the money. Nothing's easier to believe in than cold hard cash. And finally, Ledger 360 conducted a poll of Canadian citizens asking what the top issues are for debate in the next federal election. Number 1 was the economic recovery. Number 2 was reforming healthcare. Guess what number 3 was? You're darn right it's UBI. You did say UBI, right? It's kind of hard to hear y'all from here. I'm going to assume that you got it right. It actually beat out climate change. Now, as you know, if you've been a listener for long, UBI actually overlaps with all of those issues. Healthcare experts have named UBI the number one best thing we can do for health. It's the number one best way to grow and improve the economy, and it's likely necessary to solving climate change. You're not going to get people who are barely managing their monthly bills to give any significant thought to things as abstract and complicated as the effects of climate change and how to mitigate them. Well, not enough thought anyway. That's quite a ways up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As Yang says, you have to get the boot off of people's throats first, then you can achieve all sorts of things. But back to the point, UBI was not remotely on the radar just a couple of years ago. Now it's the number 3 issue in the country. And that's not even being fair because it's comparing the broad category of economic recovery to the specific policy of UBI. UBI would be the most important single policy of an economic recovery. If we were just comparing single policies, it might actually be the number 1 issue in the country. Either way, that is incredible progress, gang. Keep it up. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share the GOP legislators video, the democracy poll, and the UBI and CTC polls. Flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the Resist bot or Income Movement's easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way, and don't forget to Yang Daily.